Hi, I'm Barbara Ryan, pharmaceutical analyst at Deutsche Bank, and welcome to Pharma Face Off. Joining me to discuss emerging disease therapies today is Lisa Henderson, Editor-in-Chief, Applied Clinical Trials, Kyle Bryan, VP Global Development, PPD, and Ben Weintraub, Director of Research, Wolters Kluwer. You know, as an analyst, people are always asking me, despite all the money that's been spent in pharma R&D, why are the results so poor?
When we talk about poor performance, I think we have to define what we mean by poor performance. But if you look at the number of dollars being spent versus the number of breakthrough successes or commercial successes that come out of that, I think anyone would say that that is a poor performance. The millions that it takes to develop a new drug and get it onto the market. But if you look at the effectively designed trials and some of the clinical results that are coming back, there are real successes and real segments and areas where I think we are seeing benefit. But overall, I think you're right. There's been a disappointment for what we've been putting in.
What does the industry need to do, to address, really, I think one of the issues that's been so difficult in drug discovery and commercial success has been the fact that the marketplace, the commercial market, has changed so much. Obviously, payers driving a lot of the decision. What does that mean about, how value is being defined in the marketplace?
We know that if a drug works and it's effective and it's safe, it'll get used. But drugs that are marginal improvements that offer the same mechanism of action over another one, there's an increasing pressure on a drug like that to show value as compared to other drugs as well as on its own. So the market does become more competitive. And like Kyle was saying, the costs of developing drugs and the risk of developing drugs hasn't improved.
I would agree. I think that the ability to market sort of mediocre benefits or minimal benefit simply because there wasn't a benefit previously, or, well, this is statistically better, doesn't necessarily lead to commercial improvement or something being truly clinically better, sufficient for people to pay for it.
Just wondering about the new technologies. I think people viewed those as being a savior to this problem to some extent, making things either more simple or less costly.
It's one of those situations where the more you know and the more you learn, the more you realize you need to learn and that you don't know yet. And so while things like the Genome Project and some of the work that we've done in molecular profiling in tumors has been very important for us to really understand a disease, to wake up and realize that breast cancer is a dozen diseases, it's not one. These things have led us to see that the pathways are very complex and the trials will need to be necessarily complex. The time savings doesn't necessarily come from, crunching the timeline. It takes 6 months to do a phase 1 instead of a year. But at the end of phase 1, you come out with the right dose to go into phase 2, or you come out of phase 1B, 2A with the right combination to take on to phase 3.
That people thought that personalized medicine was going to make trials smaller, make trials quicker, isolate patients that are going to respond, and eliminate patients who are going to have adversities. And occasionally that happens, but very often it doesn't. I was going to bring up an example of bapineuzumab, which is an Alzheimer's drug in phase 3 now, where after phase 2 they had a good biomarker, which was whether the patient carried a particular genotype of ApoE4, and it would predict the response and predict the adversity. And instead of saving them money, they wound up deciding to do 2 phase 3 clinical trials, so it doubled the amount of money that they had to put into it. And each clinical trial design was separate and more complicated. And I think that's the rule we're finding from personalized medicine, that it's right now, with our current level of understanding, it's actually making it more difficult.
As the industry has responded to this much more complex and challenging environment, particularly on the payer side, we've seen an unsustainably high rate of failure in phase 3. I'm wondering, do you see any evidence that we are cutting products as an industry earlier?
We all want to find a way to fail fast in clinical trials so that you can decide after the end of phase 2 that that's it, we shouldn't go on. But I believe that as you're saying that the pipelines are more risky and less successful, there's an enormous pressure to take our compound forward just in case. And if you look at the products that do succeed, they really, a lot of them should have been cut in phase 2 because they had some very disappointing results before they wound up with good ones. Avastin failed in breast cancer, and everybody thought, not everybody, but a lot of people thought that there was no way that it was ever going to be a successful drug.
Sometimes coming from the outside, you're able to bring sort of the more critical review of what's going on in your development program and what the issues are with the drug, to be able to say, you know, this is not something that's going to be sustainable, or this is not something that people are necessarily going to want to use. We have a lot of our larger pharma that's cutting back on their R&D and are going into our going into the biotechs and forming alliances with biotechnology companies of various sizes to develop things to a certain point. I think they're a little better in that setting about saying, okay, this doesn't work. This is a no-go as opposed to a go. On the biotech side, some of the companies try to take things all the way, but they develop what I kind of think of as more of a paternal feeling toward their compound as opposed to a professional feeling, and this is their baby. And sometimes the role of the large pharma or the CRO is to explain to them that your baby is ugly. It should not go any further.
It's a difficult message to give to a small biotech because it's basically telling them that they should go out of business. A pharma company can cut a program and they can move on. A biotech company that cuts that program is basically shutting down its operations.
Right.
So you're saying there is synergy in large and small working together?
I think there can be. I think that there's always a lot of headbutting that when these come together. The small biotechs all view themselves as being fast and quick, and we can do anything, and we can do it quicker and better than large pharma can do. All large pharma has is money. They have multiple levels of bureaucracy. They move at a glacial pace. Sometimes, though, one of the problems in our market is that, you know, these small companies are rewarded by the market when they go from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3. There's no encouragement to spend the time in phase 1 to really straighten things out. They get their reward by getting to phase 3, and then it may fail because they haven't done the homework. Scientifically, it always makes sense to spend your time at phase 1 and phase 2, or even at the preclinical level. But the stock market doesn't reward that.